Hi everyone, it's Jerry. Let's have a look at a game that was played today at the 2018 Grand Chess Tour. Second leg of this event. On the white end, Wesley So. He's paired against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Rapid time controls, 25 minutes with a 10-second increment. So as I play through these moves, you could get a ballpark idea of the amount of time spent on each turn. So let's dive in and see how this one develops. Begins quiet enough, symmetrical until move 6. Bishop takes knight. Not a very common type of exchange to see, especially giving up a fianchettoed bishop for a knight. Both players end up fianchettoing their bishops in this game. What more is white getting with this particular exchange? Well, let's see. It's not only about doubled pawns. The one square that sticks out to me is d5 when I see this capture. Without the e-pawn around, d5 is a hole, and is a square that will be under white's control for what I believe we can confidently say the duration of the game. The queen knight will be there, as well as the king bishop to assist. Now, if there is one black pawn whose value has diminished more so than any other as a result of this exchange on f6, it is, in my opinion, the d pawn. Why do I say this? Well, how exactly do you have that pawn contribute in a constructive way in this game? This may be black's only moment to get rid of this half-dead pawn by playing d5 right now, but of course there would be a cost connected with that. You'd have to give up the bishop for the knight, and maybe be a little bit vulnerable on your light squares. Not quite sure of the timing. Anyhow, these are the details that spring to mind for me with this type of capture. d5 square, this pawn being a little bit backward and weakened, half dead. It's not just about the doubled pawns. Now after knight c3, black says, let's see how you like it. I'm going to do the same thing and weaken your square, corresponding d4 square. Symmetrical on this move 8. Move 9, when is it going to change? When will we stop playing copycat? Right here. Black does not block with the queen. Instead says it's going to be all right if I castle by hand. King f8, f5, bishop f6, king g7, soon to hit. Now that's a few moves. Can black afford to make these few moves? Yes. This is a static position. Not too violent. Things are not going to change so much. Pawns will not be making captures. Black can afford to do this. So the queens remain on board. So some dynamic possibilities are still present. Sure enough, the f-pawns are getting out of the bishop's way. Bishop f6, white gets on the only open file. King to g7. So the imbalance here, the main one, is not, to me at least, this control over the only open file. That's nice, it's true. It's nice that white has control over this only open file. But the opposite color bishops, that's what's sticking out to me here. The player who can better coordinate with their bishop is likely the player who is in the driver's seat. Now, aside from these two weakened squares, if there are two more squares that stick out to me, it is f2 and f7. Why? Well, these are points that each side can put pressure on, and if they could coordinate with a major piece or a knight, that's definitely going to get your opponent's attention if you put pressure on these squares, f2, f7. Let's see how play develops. Queen d3, rook c8, white's looking to now double, and knight to d4. So Wesley's next reply takes about 3 minutes. He plays the move knight to b5. Now, I thought that this was an interesting moment because here's one of the things I thought. I thought, can't black just take the knight and then try and get in the d5 move somehow? Try and get this half-dead pawn contributing in some way? This may have been one of the variations Wesley was considering before playing the move knight to b5. Now, black's reply in this position was a6. Suppose the knight is captured on b5, and then bishop d4 is played, interfering with this coordination on d5. hitting the rook. Can black now get rolling with this half-dead pawn, maybe playing c4 next? Well, not so fast. The timing would be a little bit off. This pawn may very well now fall after queen f3. So, something to bear in mind. Again, something that maybe Wesley was considering before playing knight b5 here. Okay. Knight b5, a6 in the game. The knights are exchanged. The structure remains the same. Rook e2. One rook is off now. White maintains control over the only open file. This here, move 20, is where black goes a little bit astray. White now has something to bite at after black's next move. Is able to enter black's camp. Black plays d6 here. A better move is to say, you're not allowed in my house. Bishop f6. So it's true, white has control over this only open file, but all the entry points, all of these squares here are controlled by bishops, or the bishop and two pawns. Bishop f6 was not played. d6, white enters. Queen e7, and is now just a moment away from coordinating with the bishop on f7. Bishop f6 only now, but the queen is now active in black's house, throwing punches. a5, bishop d5, here we go. Rook c7. So this is one of the moments that really captured my attention when I first reviewed this game. I thought this next sequence was pretty neat. What move did Wesley play next? This is something you need to calculate quite a bit. Several moves deep here. To be careful. What move did Wesley play next? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, here we go. Queen takes b6 is a move, you could only do this knowing that you may have to part ways with your queen, and that it's okay to do this. What is black's reply? Rook e7. This is the move you need to see. What's going on now? Well, the rook is under fire, and also the queen. You can't take the queen here, because if rook takes rook check, and then there goes your queen, you would lose your rook. So what's the plan here? Well, the plan is to take the rook on e7, move played in the game. So best for black in this position is to say, you know what? I'm just going to take the rook and play this position where I'm down a pawn, but, it is opposite color bishops. I think I can hold this. The base points are covered. Black doesn't do this. Doesn't want to play the position down just a pawn and opposite color bishops. He instead takes the queen. We're not done with this combination. Rook takes f7. We're not just winning a pawn, but also, in the end, a bishop. So here's the imbalance we're now working with. White has a pawn, a bishop, and a rook versus a queen. Equal when you look at it number-wise, point value-wise, but white is the better side here. Why? Well, white has coordination. And because of this, the black queen will struggle to cause any problems to white's side. How do you, let's say, get at the white king? You can't get at the white king. He's going to be safeguarded once he's on g2. There won't be any checks you can throw the white king's way. Look at how enormous this bishop is. If I'm doing just a quick pass of this position, if there's one piece that sticks out, it's this guy right here in the center. He is super glued in there, not getting rid of him. And he protects the king once he's on g2. So you just have to work around this piece. You cannot dislodge it. And the rook can always be tied in with it one way or the other. White easily finds coordination here. What does black do here? Well, you have to go hunting after these weak links. So this is what we have. The d pawns are picked up. Rook c6. Queen to d4 is the move played in the game. If the black queen takes on a2 and we have this kind of exchange, white will eventually be able to escort this pawn. Moves like this, c5, c6. you'll be able to push this pawn and get a queen. There's no way that black will be able to stop that. We don't have that variation, however. Queen d4 in this game. King g2, just getting it out of any checks along the back rank. King g7, check, king goes back, h4, h5, we're one move away, and black resigns. The move in the game, a4, kind of an awkward end, a4, and that's really the backbreaker. That's the one that made black resign. What is this move exactly doing? Well, if you haven't noticed, the black king has no legal moves. Right? All these squares are covered, bishop and rook, and the queen. Well, there's only this pawn on g6, and the queen that can move. Of course, moving the pawn, we just win a pawn. And if you move the queen, well, that means you're giving up control over c5. So as an example, if this game did continue, queen d3, black scoops up the c pawn, and then the a pawn. I was already highlighting how, having the bishop and the c pawn and rook would be enough to win. Well, you could imagine that it's that much easier with the a pawn around. In fact, there'd be a very smooth win if this position came about, if this game continued. This is how it may play out. Again, taking note of the coordination, we can start with the rook check, and then simply advance this pawn all the way to a7, make a rook move with check, even if that means possibly giving up the rook. Let's say the king is here, rook h6 check. Doesn't matter, the next move is to promote with the queen, and what do you have? Coordination, you're there to defend that promotion square with the bishop. The only thing black can try in this position is to, let's say, challenge this structure, try and disrupt this shelter for the white king. How can black maybe do this? This is something I questioned. g5 would be the only way, but it's instructive to see how fast this g pawn would kill team black. So black is trying for something like this. f4. If you take, then it would be a draw. Queen could bounce back and forth. d1, g4, h4 for a perpetual. But the thing is, you don't take on f4. Instead, you give a check. If the king goes here, it's mate. Bishop e4, that would be a pretty cool mate. And if the king goes back, let's say here, the pawn bolts. Pawn takes pawn, check, and then mate. So there's no way to get at the king. These ideas to influence the king side structure is just not working out. And yeah, black understood this and threw in the towel after move 35, a4. Anyhow, as usual, feel free to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed it and maybe even took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.